Well, Shabbat Shalom. In his first draft of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable." But upon sending that draft to Benjamin Franklin, he received some notes. Not many, but a few, including one very key edit. As biographer Walter Isaacson writes, he crossed out the last three words of Jefferson's phrase and changed it to read, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." That single edit transformed the American experiment from something based in dogma and doctrine to something based in reason and rationality. Notes historian Jill Lepore, truths that are sacred and undeniable are God-given, the stuff of religion. Truths that are self-evident are laws of nature, empirical and observable, the stuff of science. Franklin knew that the replacement of sacred with self-evident would signal something radical, the desire to build a government based in reason rather than religion. And he understood implicitly that words matter and that every word must be weighed and considered because every word carries the power to transform. And in our Torah portion this week, Parashat Chukat, chanted so beautifully by my colleague Rabbi Dubin just moments ago, this focus on words takes center stage. Here we meet the Israelites after they've lost Miriam and the well of water that traveled with her. They're thirsty, they're weary, and they're so very frustrated. When the Israelites demand that Moses and Aaron help them find water, our two leaders turn to God for help. How will they procure water from nothing but the rocks before them? How will they mollify this enraged people? We read Moses and Aaron fell on their faces, and Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "You and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts." Note that God says, "Vedibartem," order the rock. But what does Moses do? He raises his hand and strikes Vayech, the rock, twice with his rod. Striking, as we know, is not the same as ordering, and this does not go over well with God. The command was to order the rock. Moses struck it, not once, but twice. The punishment is swift and severe. God says to Moses, "Because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them." Moses' journey will end in the wilderness. He will not make it to the promised land. Thus, we learn here and throughout our tradition, words matter, and God's words all the more so. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. God spoke the universe into creation. God's words manifested darkness and light, earth and sky, sea and land. God's words ignite the magic of creation. Words matter. But just as words matter, so too listening matters. God said to Moses, order the rock, but Moses, he struck it. Did Moses hear God's command, or did he miss it altogether? We'll never know what led Moses to strike instead of speak, but we'll always know the consequences. We learn then it is imperative to take heed of what people say, not always to obey, but to understand. For when we fail to listen, we do so at our own peril. On this Independence Day weekend, as we stand before an America roiled by turmoil and dissension and division, we must listen. Of course, to one another and to those beyond our circles, but most especially to the voices leading our nation and to the voices striving to lead. We must listen to the words they're using and the words they refuse to use. We must take note, knowing that words create meaning and meaning creates movements. We must take note when leaders spew hatred for their opponents, proclaiming, I hate them. You know that? I cannot stand them, knowing that such vitriol can easily lead to violence. And we must take note when they call immigrants animals and aliens and invaders. We must take note when leaders continuously refer to the January 6th insurrection as a day of love, and when they repeatedly call defenders of the 2020 election frauds who are guilty of treason. Words matter. Listening matters. We must take note when someone refuses to affirm that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. And we must take note when someone supports BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. We must take note of the person whose initial statement on October 8th not only neglected to mention Hamas, but also implied Israel's culpability for the attacks. And we must take note of the person who refuses to repudiate the phrase, globalize the intifada. We take note because words matter and listening matters. And it is important that we hear what our leaders and candidates are saying because they're speaking directly to us. And in so doing, they're sharing their values, their perspectives, and often their character. And when our leaders disparage opponents, dehumanize the other, praise insurrectionists, delegitimize Israel, and inflame tensions around provocative language, we must take heed and we must ask ourselves, is this the vision we want for our country or our state or our city? The truth is, we may not all hear these words in the exact same way. Neither may we agree on their exact meaning or intent, but we can only authentically engage with our leaders, with our neighbors, and with each other if we listen. Listening matters. Words matter. And on this Independence Day weekend, may we remember these principles as our founders did, as God and Moses did. As politicians rail from their podiums, as candidates preach from their pedestals, let us remember that the words they use matter. Words that denigrate, words that isolate, words that incite or intimidate, they matter. And the way they use them matters even when we're told the opposite. Even when others try to redefine them, words matter. Meaning matters. Context matters. May we listen closely to the words of these leaders and politicians, interrogating what they say and when they say it, and asking ourselves, do the values they've communicated align with our own? Do their principles reflect our own? We all will have our own responses, but so too, we all have our responsibilities. In this fraught moment, when our values and our principles are on the line, we all share the responsibility to engage, to question, to call out, to speak up, and to make our voices heard. And we all share the privilege of participating in the political process. May we use that privilege to its greatest extent, exercising our right to vote, reaching out to our representatives, and supporting the people and organizations that speak to our values. There is so much chaos right now and so much noise, but now is not the time to stay silent, nor is it the time to disengage. If there is one truth I know to be self-evident, it is that our words matter, and we must continue to speak them and use them and write them in this fragile democracy we call home. Dear God, may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.